Mm.
All right. Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
everybody.
Welcome to a new episode of Welcome to the Winner's Circle. On today's episode, alongside Bianca Léger, sitting in the host role today, we interview a writer, a storyteller, and a wolf whisperer. Welcome to the Winner's Circle, Wolfhaven.
Thank you, folks. Bianca and Derek, it's so great. I was so happy when you reached out to me to invite me on this on your podcast and talk about, my experiences recently in the last couple of years with my creative journey and storytelling and wolves. And let's go.
Yeah, this is super exciting because we always interview our guests and talk about their hero's journey, and you have a major theme going on with the wolves. And just to give a bit of context for the people listening as to how we got connected, we met at the I Am Festival that happened at what month?
August of 20.
Thank you, time. And we got to hear some of your stories there under a tent, and it was an amazing setting, and we got to have a bit of a taste of what it's like to hear your stories as Wolfhaven. And I think today we're going to start with you sharing a little bit about where this name comes from, what it means to you, and I'm just excited to hear about how this comes into creation. Let's hear about that, please.
Right. Okay. So I've been a storyteller for about 7 years, but I'm going to start 25 years ago when I was hiking in the Whiteshell with my brother. We're out hiking the trail out there for 5 days, camping overnight in our tents. And we were way out in the middle of nowhere one day, and we came up onto it's very rocky and then swampy there, right? You get high rocks and low swamp. We came up onto a high area. The trees cleared out, and just, I don't know, 25 meters, 50 meters, less than 50 in front of us was a wolf standing there. And like when we saw it, it was already, probably knew minutes, hours ago we were around, like who knows, right? But it was just, this moment was incredible. It was just, it was so calm. There was no fear. And like I don't know, it almost seemed like because it had no fear and showed just this calm and serenity, like just another day in the forest. I felt that too in a way, and so me and my brother, we saw it, and it just, maybe stood there for 10 seconds, and it turned around, and we kind of like jumped off the edge of the cliff. We walked over there later and looked down and was like, this is like a cliff. It looked like it just jumped off to its death, but obviously there was some kind of secret wolf pack there, right? So we took off our packs and had a good breather, and we're like, whoa, there's a wolf, crazy, So about 10 minutes later, going down from the high feature into a gully of trees, not too thick, you could see 10, 15 feet away. And we got down there, and like we saw 3 wolves walking about 15, 20 feet just through the trees. They just kind of bypassed us. And so we saw that wolf, which is a good chance. I mean, I'm not going to say for sure, but the alphas often roam from the pack, right? And go fast, and they know the land really well and stuff. So we might have seen that alpha, and then down 10 minutes later, we just ran into the pack. They were doing something down there. And so that was about 25, I'm trying to remember, 1998. Yeah, 25 years ago. So since then, I've had tons of wilderness adventures. I used to do a ton of backpacking, so that's when we saw that pack, my brother and I. And now I go in my kayak, my sea kayak. I have a 19-foot sea touring kayak, which I take on big lakes. So I've gone on Lake Superior, Lake of the Woods I spend a lot of time on. Lake Winnipeg is where I go the most. And I'm going to tell you why. I've been on Lake Manitoba, Winnipeg, Osis. So like all the big water nearby here. And like they're like inland oceans, right? You can get some pretty crazy waves and amazing wildlife experiences. And so there was this, so over 25 years, or I say 23, because 2 years ago, the big thing happened. So 23 years, I'm all these adventures, and I'm finding protected areas on the map of Manitoba. I love maps, and I looked at map of Manitoba and I'm like, look at this island way out in the middle of this lake, Birch Island on Lake Winnipegosis. It's a protected area. It's called Birch Island. I don't remember, a protected area something. And way out in Winnipegosis, the only way to get there is by boat, and I have kayaks. So I'm like, I want to go there and see why this has been chosen to be a protected area and what makes it. And when you go to those areas, they are stunning. They are chosen because these ecosystems are amazing. Like when I landed on Birch Island in Lake Winnipegosis, which was a 10K jump from the mainland to the island, 10K of open water. We landed and we saw frogs that were like this big hopping all around the shoreline. And I'd never seen frogs that big. They were all over the place. Like we were stepping out of our kayak and they were like right by our feet. And we were just like, man, this is like another planet right here. But it's in Manitoba, So adventuring like that and having amazing wildlife experiences. And then in 2016, I went to this island on Lake Winnipeg and I saw by myself, and I do a lot of solo trips, and I saw tons of wolf sign, like tracks and scat and like little like wolf pup prints and wolf adult prints, all on the beaches of this island I went to. And that was 26, but didn't see any wolves. Then in 2020, COVID happens. So I become a storyteller 7 years ago. And as I become a storyteller, I know I need to write a story about wolves. I have not, this is still since 23 years I saw that wolf pack, but I've read a lot. I read a lot of fantasy. I've read a lot of fantasy. So a lot about like wolf shapeshifters and werewolf stories. I love like anything to do with wolves, So I knew that I needed to write a story about wolves, featuring wolves as a storyteller. And I also knew that I wanted to create a storytelling name with wolf in it. Yeah. And I didn't know what it was going to be yet. So in 2019, I wrote this story. I did a ton of research. I'd been reading since becoming a storyteller and more about wolves because I knew I was preparing for this story. I did tons of research. I found out about this wolf that lived in Yellowstone that was a descendant of the Canadian wolves that were transported there from Alberta and BC to restock the wolf population in Yellowstone, which had been exterminated in like 1940 or something by the park staff there. And so this wolf, which in my story, I called it, this story was called She-Wolf. And it's just this amazing story. And this wolf, like it's a true story, the wolf was observed a lot by scientists and even park guests, like taking video and like video of her hunting like 800 meters away from the highway in Yellowstone National Park. Like they just were doing their wolf business and humans were watching them. And they adapted in this crazy way where they just were like, had this wild wolf life and people could watch them like almost daily in their activities. And so she was one of these wolves and they watched her, and she wandered all over the park. But she had to leave her pack early because she was really a strong wolf. And that's the way wolves spread out, is that if there is a wolf that grows up and they show signs of being an alpha, like that they have a strong leadership and that they're ready to breed and that they're capable of breeding and being like that leader, because a wolf pack only has an alpha pair that breeds. The rest of the pack works towards them and the pups. Male and female alphas co-lead the pack. You might have a stronger one. So She-Wolf definitely was like the strong alpha. Any other wolf around her, like she was definitely stronger than any wolf she encountered in a very specific way, because she had so she was pushed out of her pack at quite a young age because she was showing these signs of being leadership. And it's just the natural wolf world where the other wolves and the parents are like, okay, get out of here. Imagine if you had a kid, they grew up to be like a teenager and they were like, oh, I'm going to have a family now and stay here and live with you, mom and dad, right? In the world today, it's like, no, you go get your own house and have your family over there, right? So wolves are like that. They're like, go have your family over there. So they pushed her out and she went on to like learn. she spent an extra amount of abnormal long time being a lone wolf, and being a lone wolf is really risky because you don't have a pack to help hunt with you. But she learned how to take full-size elk down by herself, and she did it over and over again. Like most lone wolves don't do that. They can't take down a full like elk or moose size thing by themselves, but she learned to do it by herself, living on her own. And then she just kept doing it. Like it was something that became normal for her to take down full size prey by herself. And she eventually met these two male wolves. And the wolf world in mating and love is very dynamic, much like humans, where very strong, unique individuals will have multiple partners. Like I know a lot of people in my life who are polyamorous and, who are open in that way. And the wolf world does work like that. And she essentially met these two males. When she was 3, they were younger than her, and they both became her mates. Like she had pups with one of them, but they both were like loyal to her until she died and were like smitten by her. And because she had this incredible charisma, like some wolves will show their dominance, like alphas have to show their dominance, right? But some wolves don't have to show it very much. They just through the way they behave, just through the way they, carry themselves in the world and relate to the other members of the pack can be so powerful. And wolves will have different personalities. So to say wolves are aggressive or wolves are calm, I mean, could we say humans are aggressive, humans are calm? Those are not true statements, right? Like as they stand on their own. So you can have aggressive wolves, you can have calm wolves, and some dominant wolves are aggressive. They use their size, they use their just fierceness, they'll growl and nip and stuff. And she never had to do that. She only had to ever it's just very subtle, like a submissive wolf. If there's a dominant wolf, when they first kind of reconnect or encounter each other, the submissive wolf will sometimes just be like an inch lower the way they have their posture. And that communicates to the other wolf, I see you as my caregiver, my parent, my leader, right? And she would just put her nuzzle on top of the wolf and breed him happily, whereas other alphas have to would pin other wolves and remind them who's the boss and stuff. So she went on from being this lone wolf for quite a few years to having a pack of 13 wolves at one point. And it's an incredible story. So this story I called She Wolf. It was to celebrate wolves and my passion for wolves and the strong female spirits in the world, the strong females who are out there doing things on their own without the world, saying, here's how you should do it, or here's what you can or can't do. Because She Wolf went out there and she's just like, I got to hunt and I got to feed myself, so I'll just get that big thing. And she just did it, She didn't have anyone telling her, oh no, usually wolf packs do this, okay? So wait. So that was a celebration of strong female spirits for me, and which is connected to a whole other kind of epiphany that I had in my life. Okay, so She Wolf wrote that story in 2019, started performing. In the spring of 2020, I was in the middle of a storytelling program that I had organized at the Millennium Library, and there were other storytellers. Every 2 weeks they were coming, and I got to tell my She Wolf story. Well, I was going to do it twice, but the program got interrupted by COVID. Everything got canceled. And I had a plan that spring to travel to Yellowstone, Wyoming, and Montana. I was going to go down there for 2 or 3 weeks and just write and try and see if I could go and find wolves somewhere that, but I just wanted to be down there and write and just have a nice, just connect with Montana and Wyoming and find go into the mountains and stuff. And some of these places where I've read the stories about wolves, and especially She Wolf, right? but that trip got canceled. I was even planning Airbnbs and stuff. So that summer of 2020, everything was canceled. There were no events to go to. There was nothing really there, you know. So what did I do all summer? I went on camping trips and kayaking trips. And I went back to that island that I went to in 2016 and saw all those prints. In 2020, and by myself in the spring, saw tons of evidence, tracks, everything all over the place. I created track traps. I would smooth the beach out every night before bed. And in the morning, I could see what had walked up and down. And multiple wolves, like every day, at least one wolf was patrolling the whole border of the island, like the whole thing. And it was about 16 kilometers long. I had quite a trip. That was a solo trip. I didn't see any wolves on that trip in spring of 2020. And I had a crazy thing out on the lake. I got into some rough weather, and I probably got into a situation. It was the closest I ever got to like dying on a solo kayaking trip. And it woke me up about being out on my own, and like that I have a daughter and I have a whole world of people that want me to be alive. And, you know, so it kind of woke me up with being out there by myself. So writing She-Wolf, going out there, seeing the evidence again, you know, and then almost like having this crazy life-threatening experience on the lake. And then I went back there in August with my friend Ethan. And on the first day out, when we got to the island, we were probably a couple hundred meters off the shore, and we saw a wolf on the beach. And at first we thought it was a bear because it was black. It was just dark black. And I mean, wolves are come in all kinds of colors. The only colors they don't come in are pink. No, that's not true. I can't even think of a color that they don't come in, because some wolves have all kinds of crazy hair. But imagine, you know, humans have just blonde and dark, and wolves are the same, but they tend to be more often gray and grayish, you know, kind of the average is gray, right? And that's the name of the species, gray wolf too. But we saw this black wolf. We thought it was a bear at first. My friend Ethan, we were quite a ways away. And my friend Ethan I was like, Ethan, and you know, which is kind of dumb because it hurt us. So it walked on the beach for maybe half a minute and then took off into the trees. And by the way it moved and stuff, I could tell it was not a bear. And we walked on that beach the next day and saw the wolf tracks. So that was that was amazing. Like, and we were far away, and I just the fact that I saw it, and then we walked on the beach. We spent 8 days on the island, and my friend Ethan is an indigenous bushcrafter. He's Ojibwe, or no, he's Cree, but he's a bushcrafter. You can light a fire with a bow drill and a hand drill. So we spent 8 days on the island just soaking it in. It's paradise. It's amazing. There'll be some photos on my webpage. And when we left, we were there 8 days, and on the way back, right near where we saw that black wolf, there's this is near Hecklin. If you've ever been out there, there's a lot of limestone cliffs and sandy cliffs. So this island has a lot of sandy cliffs, and some of that are 20 feet tall. And there's been trees like in some spots. So we were paddling, and we saw 4 wolves walking along the top of this 20-foot cliff in the trees. And then the trees suddenly cleared, and we saw them right on the edge. And it was 3 pups and an adult, like a grayish white adult, and 3 pups that were at least half the size of that adult. And it was amazing. Like, and we were way closer this time. The adult saw us. They actually disappeared in the trees, and then we kept going. They were going the same way along the shore that we were paddling, right? So we're paddling and hoping to see them up, and sure enough, they were there. They were taking their time, but then the adult came out on a point of rocks and saw us coming, and she took off into the woods. And I thought, okay, she took off with the pack, the 3 pups, right? But one of the pups stayed on the shoreline, and I slowly paddled, and I'm watching this. He's on the rocks, it is on the rocks, and I'm slowly paddling, just like thinking, just be as quiet as you can, get close, see what could happen here. And I just would paddle every once in a while and then just float. And I got so close to that wolf. I don't know, like 20 feet, 30 feet in my boat, and it was on the shore, and it stopped and looked at me, directly at me a couple times. It yawned a few times, which can be a sign. It's like a place filler, sign of anxiety. Humans do it sometimes, fake yawns. It's an interesting thing. I read about that animals do. Cats, dogs will do it. They don't really need to yawn, but they'll do the motion. And it was just amazing. It was just this, and I know from what I know about wolves, I caught this wolf at an age where did not understand what I was. The experiences those wolves have with humans on an island are people in motorboats. And because I'm in a kayak, me and my friends are in kayaks, they don't know what that is. People don't go there in kayaks. It's hard to get there. It's crazy water to get there, to go over open water to get there. And then the next spring I go there, and I swear to God, I can't be 100%, but I come on to right nearby that same spot, and I'm by myself. The sun is setting because I didn't leave the launch until 5 p.m. And I think it was the fall. And I saw this adult wolf walking on the sand. And that was the year the water was super low. And I just slowly paddled close and close. And I got within 50 meters of this adult wolf. And we just had a 5-minute staring contest. I had to leave that wolf behind. I had to turn away and go away from that wolf because I had to get to my campsite before it got dark. And I would be setting up my tent in the pitch black in crazy wilderness, with wolves and bears live there. So I like to set up my tent in the light, but the sun was setting behind it, and this wolf just stood there. And you know what it did? It looked at me, walked along a bit, acted nonchalant, looked at me, and it was the same wolf. It was the same wolf, just grown up. And the next day I encountered that wolf. And so and I've had now 12 encounters with that wolf pack, up to 4 individuals at the same time, both from my boat and being on land now, where wolves were coming down the beach, walking towards me. And then they just, I noticed them, they noticed me, and they took off. It's been incredible. And I will tell you that traveling in the wilderness and having wilderness experiences, and especially now these wolf encounters, is a huge part of my spirituality. And never, up until the last 5-6 years, I was never any kind of spiritual person. I never had spirituality, but these encounters, and I could go on and on about the amazing wildlife encounters I've had with all kinds of other animals, eagles and birds and ducks and otters and coyotes and bears. On a trip 2 years ago, I saw 5 bears in one trip, kayaking trip, and I was like, whoa. So I'll try and explain this to you. Sorry, I'm just going on and on. You guys haven't had a chance to ask any questions.
That's good.
Making it easy for you. So when you see a wolf thriving in a habitat, it indicates that ecosystem is functioning from top to bottom, that it's a healthy ecosystem, because the wolf is the apex predator. So all the energy, all the calories, all the nutrition goes from the bottom, from the little minnows and the weeds in the lake, all the way up into the wolves, the bears, and the eagles, who are also the apex predators, but of the sky. And everything about that island has to do with the lake too. The water makes life on that island happen. It's an amazing ecosystem. There's a documentary out on Netflix right now called Island of the Sea Wolves, about an island off the shore of BC. And if you watch that, it is very similar. Take away the ocean kind of stuff, and it is very similar. Bald eagles, bears, wolf pack living on the island, walking on the beach. You got to watch that documentary. It's amazing. But it's very similar to that island, and everything, the water like creates the life, and most of the food that these wolves are getting are dead fish and birds that are coming up from the water. That's, I think, most of the life on the island. That's how the system works. All, you know, the birds and the animals die, they get washed up on the shore or on the island, and then everything else consumes it, right? So the ecosystem is healthy when you see a wolf. And when I see a wolf, like in the 7 Ojibwe teachings, if you're familiar with, the wolf is humility. Yeah. And that, I mean, that's a huge thing. It just, you know, when I think about the wolf, I think about humility. And when I see the wolf, like even before I put humility on my list of my highest values, and I could talk about my values later if you want. But when I see a wolf in the ecosystem out there, and I don't know if you guys have ever encountered a wolf or something really wild, and it just blew you away, like your mind was like, it went somewhere else, right? I don't know. And I see it humbles me because I see perfect, like, no, in the human world, I see a lot of doubt and a lot of flaws and a lot of misconception and a lot of miscommunication, a lot of this is the way the world should be, but everyone else is acting this, people are acting this way. And ever since I was a kid, you know, I just was like, what's going on around here? Everyone's saying one thing and doing another, you know? And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, right? Just everything, you know, there's these ideas out there about how to be healthy, but so many people just weren't able to reach them. And when I was a kid, I didn't understand what I just said, but I had a feeling, right? And now when I see a wolf, none of that exists. There is no doubt. There is no flaws. There is no questions. It is perfect. It is true. There's nothing false about it. That ecosystem, that wolf, that encounter is incomparable to what we, you know, what our minds, what our human society is structured on. Like, you just, you know, it can't be questioned, right? And to me, that became my spirituality, like and it humbles me in a way that it just reminds me that there's just this one little bit of life on this huge, big Mother Gaia, you know. And also it makes me think this. It makes me think, okay, here's the wolf in this amazing ecosystem working from top to bottom because the wolves are thriving. What is my place? You know, my species used to be an apex predator, still is, but that's in a really convoluted way. In this urban Winnipeg, this city that I live in and that I try and escape all the time, what is my place in this urban system? Like, I look at the wolf and its system, and I look at myself and this system, this society, and I'm just like, I have no clue, like it just does not compare, right? I mean, I definitely have that understanding and a very good grasp of who I am and where my place in the world now. And those encounters with wolves have just brought that humility to me. And yeah, it's changed me forever. And so Wolfhaven. So I was thinking about how to talk about the island to people, and I call it Wolf Island now. And I'm not going to tell you the real name because I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm being selfish or if I'm being good and trying to make sure people don't suddenly start streaming over to the island. To get there, you can only get there by boat, so you have to be pretty adventurous. But I call it Wolf Island. But I was thinking about calling it the Wolfhaven. And like I had said before, I wanted my storyteller name to have wolf in it. Mm-hmm. And my last name is Havens. And I said Wolfhaven a couple of years ago, and I was like, Wolfhaven? Are you kidding me? Like, this name just popped out. And at this point, now that I've had these 12 encounters and I've been talking about these wolves and celebrating them and have plans to do more, and just this synergy of my wilderness experience, encountering that wolf pack 25 years ago, becoming a storyteller, celebrating wolves through story, re-encountering wolves, and now going out there. The 5 subsequent trips I've had, I just went there twice first and didn't see wolves. 5 subsequent trips, I've seen wolves every time. And I know that I've transitioned, I changed. The more time I spent out there, the more that I just allowed it to be and bring my frenetic urban monster energy there. You know, my you know, because when we go into nature, it's often it's just like, whoa, right? It's just like, whew. But it can take us a while to calm down and to get into it, and to really be able to be in touch with nature, and to be like a wolf, and to be able to be in a place and just know when anything is moving or slightly out of ordinary, right? So the more time I spent in nature, the more time I spent on that island, I just knew the smells. I knew the feeling, just the vibe, the energy, the sounds, the movements. And when I'm on that island, I see so much more than I used to. Life everywhere, small, tiny little bugs to wolf bears. And I just am so alert and attuned to it now. It's definitely something I saw, you know.
Incredible. It really changes you. And I don't mean to interrupt. I just have
You should ask a question.
I have so many questions for you, and I want to get to everything you want to share. But can we just pause for a second and talk about this synergy you're talking about, and this feeling of clarity that comes to us in a place of wilderness where things just make sense? Because you point to so many things, like the fact that people say one thing and they do another, and there's an incoherence, and not everybody is aware of that. We don't even realize that we're walking in confusion. So you talk about your experience in the wilderness and that how that changed you. I would love to hear about how this has changed your character. And also, what do you mean by seeing perfection in the wolf? What does that perfection look like? And what is that quality of humility? So this is kind of a large question, but I'm interested in your experience of
what was the second part of the question you asked? You asked, how did it change my character?
Yeah. And then what do you mean by the perfection in the wolf?
Oh, okay, right. Okay. So, well, let's go to the perfection in the wolf. So maybe the word perfection is not the perfect word, because what is perfect, right? What is perfection? What can define that? One thing I envy about wolves or wildlife, and I mean, I can't say this for sure because I don't know, and there would be some zoologists and scientists who would say that's not true, but I imagine a wolf who's been out hunting for 2 weeks and hasn't gotten anything, and it's found a place to sleep. The pack and has found a place to sleep for the night. They've been out hunting all day. They've been hunting for 2 weeks and have gotten hardly anything. And this is norm for the world. This is norm for wildlife, right? When they settle in under that pine tree for the night, they're not thinking, oh my gosh, we haven't gotten anything for 2 weeks. Oh, it was us. Oh no, we're and they're not thinking, oh my gosh, are we gonna get anything tomorrow? They're going to sleep. They're just, I'm a wolf, I'm going to bed, I feel hungry. That's that, whereas we have to obsess and ruminate and think about, oh my gosh, we haven't had food in 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, and I'm just using that one example, but you know what I mean? Wildlife and those animals don't have to go through that. They don't have all this perception of what should be. and tries to do all this stuff to make it happen. When it, it's to try and make a perception happen, like, right? A perception of what we should be as people, how we should structure our lives, what we should do. The wildlife is not thinking about that. And, and things like, for example, like hatred doesn't exist in nature. Hatred is 100% human only thing. Their animals do not hate. They defend themselves. And sometimes they get sick and don't know what they're doing, just like humans. But hatred, to hate, to start to tell stories in your head about something that's the other, and to build stories in your head about them and how they're different and how that's wrong and how they shouldn't, I don't like them and I hate them. Nature and animals are incapable of that. And I mean, so there's some of the things that makes me say that, nature is just true. It's the truth. You want the truth? You go out there and immerse yourself in nature and just open yourself to it and watch the bees and the geese and the seagulls. And if you get to see some coyotes or wolves or bears, and watch everything, look at the trees and the plants. And it's true. It's the truth. And when I see a squirrel running along the sidewalk and they're the truth too, because they've always lived here. We're just sharing their land, right?
And now let's bring it back to you. That second question Bianca asked, or the first question.
So how did that change my character? So there's quite a number of things that have changed my character. That is just one of them. And in a way, that was just one of them that just was like a sign of you are on the right path. Like, so becoming a storyteller 7 years ago was a huge thing in my life. I was doing personal and professional development coaching, which we had talked about, I think, before we started, maybe, where I was helping people. I was coaching people on public speaking, interpersonal communication, resume design, coaching for interviewing, things like that. And actually, at the time, I was toying with the idea of becoming a specifically men's coach, and coaching things like for men, and like how to be a gentleman, and how, and adding that kind of like personal behavior thing on. But at the time, I never had a successful relationship. I was single at the time, right? I had been married and had a kid, divorced. And I really realized something, that I couldn't coach people until I had a full, healthy understanding with how I related to women and how I related just to other people. And at the same time, so I was like, okay, I need to learn how to be a good partner. So I started reading books, because that's how I learn everything. I just get a book out of the library and read it, and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Start doing these practices or mental health things, or meditation and all this stuff. I just teach myself, right? And what was I talking about? What book was I just going to get from the library?
Oh, the question about how the wilderness changed your character.
Yeah, so I was talking about humility, and I was talking about storytelling, and I was talking about, I'm just trying to remember where I was. Okay, so the storytelling, oh yes. So I discovered this book, this series of books about how to thrive in a relationship, how to be a good partner, and one of their things that was like a concept, a theme among all their books was, was basically, okay, forget about the other person. Let's start with you, right? Work on yourself. If you want to find a healthy person, you got to be healthy. If you want to find an interesting person, you got to be interesting. If you want to find a dynamic person, you got to be dynamic, right? And then the next message was, one of the key things to a healthy life for any person is to have a creative pursuit, a creative expression. And at that point, I had not done storytelling. I've read a ton. I was really good at telling jokes. I was coaching people on public speaking. I could give academic presentations. You know, I had quite a bit of speaking skill. And so becoming a storyteller, it was true. And once I started becoming a storyteller and really got this message of a key part of being a healthy person is creative pursuit. And it doesn't matter if you take it and sell it or share it really wide, but as long as you put effort into it, and if you want to share it, that's good, but you don't have to, right? But as long as you put time and effort to it and you can put emotion into your creative expression. And it was true. And right around that same time, I decided, okay, I'm done with the coaching. And I was in the military for 10 years in the first half of my life, another lifetime now, it seems. And I spent a lot of time telling people what to do, bossing people around. And when I was coaching, I still felt like I was sort of doing that, you know, still in that mode. And I was like, okay, I want to be a storyteller and teach people things by telling them interesting stories, you know, not by saying, here's what you need to do to be better, you know, by telling them stories about my life, by creating stories that have messages, and some are just super fun, awesome stories, you know, that make you laugh. And it was true, like that choice to actually do that. And I'll tell you, like you guys love talking all about the hero's journey. I mean, that's every episode you bring that up in some way or another. And I mean, that was a huge thing I discovered in my practice to become a storyteller. I did a lot of study of story creation, story writing, character creation, character arcs, story structure. And I discovered the hero's journey through a writer called Christopher Vogler, who wrote The Writer's Journey, the book, The Writer's Journey. I actually have it right here.
I have it in the other room as well.
Where I discovered the hero's journey. And he worked with Hollywood, and like he discovered the hero's journey through George Lucas, who did Star Wars, and George Lucas got it from Joseph Campbell, right? And so I started just getting really fascinating with this idea of the story structure, the monomyth, this structure that has existed in stories in the world for thousands of years, right? And now I do workshops on it. And so let me tell you my storytelling, and this builds into my character change. My dark night of the soul, my central ordeal of my storytelling journey, because your hero's journey can apply to your whole life from birth to death. It could apply to one venture in your life. It could apply to this year right now, some health issue, right? You can see the steps in many different areas in your life and different types of journeys you're going through. So for my storytelling, the central ordeal, which a key feature of that is kind of a death and rebirth, whether it's a metaphorical death and rebirth, or the hero of the story actually does seem to die or disappear. That happens in a lot of popular movies. It's like an explosion happens and you don't see the hero for the next 10, 15 minutes of the movie, right? And you're just like, okay, what happened, or whatever, like the death and rebirth. And that's usually at the center of the story. So what happens is that I get my storytelling start at Manitoba Museum. I'm giving storytelling, educational program tours. So it was during the day I was volunteering. Classes would come in and I would take a class or half a class around a few of the exhibits. You know, the Manitoba Museum, the Nonsuch, and the Hudson Bay Company stuff. So I had to learn all about those things and then give these class tours, and like teachers would be there and I had to follow this thing. And then I got into it and I started adding my own stuff from my own research, like stuff that I hadn't been taught by the other staff to teach, that I just brought, added. And I was like making it fun. And then I just thought, you know what? I knew storytelling was a huge part of public speaking. If you want to give a good presentation, you got to have a story. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. Technology, charity, something you're passionate about, a job, a business, you got to have a story and connect it with the folks, right? So I was like, I've already been doing this in my public speaking, in my presenting, my instruction that I've done, teaching I've done throughout my life. So now it's time to make it fun. And I started condensing those tours of like the Nonsuch. I wrote a story about a crew member of the Nonsuch I did the research about who this guy could have been, what his background was. I created a backstory, why he was on the voyage, the things he did to get ready, all historical. And I did that story at the Nonsuch. And I did that as a volunteer. And I actually had like a bunch of the high-end museum staff. I tried to get the most highest quality staff at the museum to come and watch me for my like practice, because I wanted to like challenge myself. I'm always like, I want to pick the worst possible audience to practice this to, so that I can just do it well, you know? So I did that story. And then the next year, a year later, the museum offered me a contract to write stories at Christmas time for the month of December, or the Christmas break, the school Christmas break. The museum gets busy and they like highlight things in there and have a special 2 weeks during the Christmas school break. So they hired me, they offered me a contract, and I like told them about, we talked about it, and then they offered me this contract to write Christmas stories. And the theme was Christmas in the 17th century. And I was going to write original Christmas stories for the set fee, and there was a date, and we had finalized the contract, and they sent it to me, and I was going to sign it, bring it in the next day. And that day before, I totally panicked. I was like, there's no way I can do this contract. Are you kidding me? Who a storyteller? There's no storytellers for 100 miles. Like, are you like, you know, who's a storyteller? As if I can write something and present it. You know, I'd already been doing some storytelling, but I just had this huge doubt. And I think when I went to sleep that night, my decision was, I'm calling him in the morning saying I can't do it, you know, personal reasons.
Mhm.
But the next morning I woke up and I had to deliver the contract over there at some point, signed. And I just went through the motions of just doing it. I was just like, okay, those thoughts you thought last night are just, they're thoughts. They can be on their own. You don't have to entertain them. And I just like signed the contract, put it in, and I wrote 3 amazing stories and delivered these stories to families and kids. And if you've ever been in the Nonsuch gallery, sometimes there was like, geez, there was 100 people in there, just people running everywhere. And I would gather people and say, come in this room, and I would tell them stories. And it was amazing. That was my dark night of the soul, where I had just this, it like death and rebirth. I mean, it was very short, maybe over a couple of days or whatever, where it was probably longer than one day. It was probably like building up, like, can I do this? Can I do this? But the day before, I was like coming up with what I was going to say to get out, to say I can't sign the contract. And that's such an example it's definitely not a death and like explosion where someone died and what happened to him, but it was definitely this moment of like, it's like, do I go forward? Like that could, if I hadn't done that contract, that could have been the death of my storytelling career, right? It could have been. And I know that going through that and going and then having the incredible reward after, and now, I mean, that was 6 years ago, and now I've come so far, and the skills I've learned and the things I've learned and the events and things I've done now have just, and so the synergy and the way, so that, I mean, the storytelling really changed my character. And through my practice of learning about the hero's journey, and I've done workshops on these now, presented workshops on the hero's journey about a tool for story creation and about for self-growth and self-reflection, right? We can see ourselves in these steps in whatever venture, life, place we're at. And I've done workshops on that at festivals, and I did my own last year. And so just, that was a huge thing. It was, I've read a ton in my life, and there were, when I was a kid, I lost myself in books, right? Was escape through fiction, learned a lot about stories and just what I like to read and whatnot. And okay, I just lost my place. Where was I going? Sometimes I was going on a tangent there. Hey, you ask Karen,
You're asking this question about how the wilderness changed your.
yeah. So the hero's journey, that got me ready to be open. I started teaching it, and they say when you want to master something, you should teach it, right? So I was starting to apply these things to my life. I started to teach them, and then I just had this moment of like a few months where I just started to be like, you know, all these tools, Matthew, you have all this knowledge, you're starting to pass it on. And suddenly I just became the message that I was sending out. Like I just felt like, and the wolf encounters were right around the same time. And so to say that, you know, I had those encounters and came home and suddenly was this, it was like it was all this stuff that happened in the last 2 years. And what's crazy about COVID is that it interrupted a lot of people's life plans. And there's a lot of bad stories from COVID and people having to change things up. And it interrupted plans that I had, big plans. But it also provided this different path, this different opportunity to discover that wolf pack. And you know, have you ever heard that luck only happens to people who are ready, who are prepared, right? And I just I just know that when I started to encounter those wolves, I was at a place in my life where I was just like, any positive spiritual energy, I'm just sucking it in. I'm just like, you know, I'm just like letting it in. I'm just letting it in. I just was at a point where I was just more open to it. So the power of these encounters, you know, just sat with me and resounded in me, and just, you know, it's hard to describe how it changed me. It just, you know, it's just, you know, I talk about it. You saw me, like I get like teary and stuff, you know. It's just so powerful, you know, to think about those things and the humility. And I'll tell you about this one. On Lake of the Woods, I was on a trip, a 5-day solo trip where I did 150 kilometers in 5 days in my kayak, and which was a huge physical challenge. But I saw some incredible things, and I'm paddling along, and I saw some ducklings, and I saw them quite a ways ahead of me. I'm in my boat, and I saw them because they start flapping. You know how they can't fly, but they can flap and kind of run along the water. So I saw them doing that. And then I saw the reason they were doing that, because a bald eagle was hunting them. And this was like I saw this all happening in front of me, and I was just far enough away where they weren't concerned about me, and they were doing their thing. And I saw this bald eagle go at these ducklings 3 times, and they were running. Every time it swooped, they were right. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, go ducklings, but I'm also like, go eagle, because it's nature. And I can't be like, oh, the ducklings didn't get away, because that's me judging and you know, anthropomorphizing, like putting my human emotions, projecting onto it, right? I'm gonna allow it to happen. So I saw that, and like, it was amazing to see that. And the eagle didn't get anything, because the standard ratio of hunting success is like 1 in 10 times usually, or less. And that was just that incident alone. Like, I will never forget that. And like how amazing it was to witness that interaction, you know, and it humbled me. So, and just so many interactions with animals like that. And when you go out into the wilderness, when you start to have these interactions, and this is where the difference is. Most people encounter wildlife, and especially predators, and they are surprised by them. And usually the predator knows they're there, right? They know the human's there before the human knows they're there. And the human is like, sees them, and the animal often will take off, right? Now, when you go into deep nature, animals don't know about humans. So you can encounter an animal that has lived 4 or 5 years and never encountered a human, right? 4 or 5 years, you know, the average lifespan of a wolf, like 6, 7 years old, is an old wolf, like, right? Because nature's tough. And you see these animals and they are curious. Some of them are like, what is that? And when you have animals coming to you to see what you are, that is when it changes. Like when you aren't like let's try and see a bear today. Oh my gosh, the wolves are over there, let's try and go see them. Where they're actually coming to investigate you. And here, a great example of this is bald eagles. When you're in a place, and Manitoba is just so many bald eagles everywhere. They live on the tall trees on the edge of all our lakes. And Wolf Island it's Predator Island because the bald eagles are the apex predators of the air there. And yeah, just to trying to think how I was connecting wolves and bald eagles, but just the power of those experiences and seeing those things happen. I can't, it's hard. It's impossible to find that anywhere else. You know, it's just impossible. And so that character change, and like I said, just I got to a point in my life and the spiritual change, and I was open to it. So right around the time when I first saw those wolves, I was starting to get into this. I wrote a list of values that I now define my life and how I behave against. It's a list of 11 values. And I also have a vision statement that I wrote out. And when I wrote that list of values out in the spring of 2020, I had 9. And now I've added 2, and humility was one of the ones I added. I didn't, wolves have been in my life, but then I knew about humility being one of the teachings, but I just hadn't incorporated it yet all. And once I really relearned and was reminded of that humility was the teaching for a wolf, it was like, okay, you're humble, dude. Like humility has to guide you all the time, and my list of 11 values, I'll tell you them, are friendship is my number 1 value. And I have a great story about I Am Festival, and Maurice and Tracy connects to them. But friendship, love, empathy, creativity, nature, physical and mental health, truth, integrity, diversity, mentorship, and humility. And anyone could just say, oh, these are my values, but each one of those words, I unpack, I dissect, I explore what that value is, how to play it out in my life, what are the challenges that people face when they try to be humble, like mentorship, like what is a mentor, why, all those things I totally unpack. So
Let's take time to explore one of those. The one that pertains to the wolf, humility. Can you kind of get into why the wolf is known?
I think I had to, the sun has set since we started. I think I have to add some light. Is it really dark here?
Great.
It's so see.
I had light.
It's perfect.
There's a wolf.
Wait, that's gonna like shine right on. Look at that. It's like a sunbeam right in my face though.
Great, that's great. It works.
Is it? I don't know.
Let's get into why the wolf is known.
Wolf background there. Okay, a little brighter. Wait, no, I don't want that. I'm gonna be all fussy.
Setting is important.
I'm gonna be all fussy.
Have a good storytelling without a good setting.
I gotta have the vibe, the atmosphere. That's not bad, eh?
Wolf, humility.
Humility. So yes, so humility, I did, like I was saying before, just the humbleness. The humility is that the reason the wolf represents humility is because the way the wolf, like a good, healthy wolf, will be a part of the wolf community and will, like I said, that the whole wolf pack works towards the alpha pair who have the pups. So the whole community is working towards the next generation. And a good wolf will, do anything it can to make sure the pack is healthy, right? And share the food. And a really good alpha will spend time with all members of the pack, even the omega, and because it's something in the wolf world you'll have a whipping boy, or you'll have the little, the village, the pack idiot, or they just become the lowest on the pole. And it's hierarchy in a wolf pack, but a really good alpha will make sure that wolf is not bothered a lot, and will relate to it in a certain way. And when you look at the whole system, that wolf is necessary, like that omega wolf, that low end of the pole, that all the other wolves, if they are feeling they need to vent some frustration, will do it on that wolf. And it seems like it's so unfair, but it serves a purpose. And a really good alpha, and I was talking about she-wolf earlier, and that was a trait she showed, was just humility, just that, like, it was almost like this awareness that she was the alpha or the boss, right? She just did her thing. She just was the way she could confidently hunt and provide for herself, and was so strong. And while she was a lone wolf, she-wolf was like hunted by other packs, because any territory she moved into, she was now a threat to the female alpha, right? It would just be like if suddenly, someone came in your house and was like starting to like talk to your partner, like, it's like, get out of here. What are you, right? As some stranger. So she was often hunted, and but she was always just so smart and could get away and knew how to use the ground. And, she was just so smart. She was just, at being a wolf, she was just killer, right? She was awesome. And other wolves could feel that energy, right? Of her confidence, of her just knowing what to do all the time. And like I said, like you just see this, I don't know, you can see in wolves like that, you watch footage of them or you encounter them, and they just seem humble. They just seem like they're just like, I'm just doing my thing, no big deal. I'm not, like when it comes to predators and stuff, we often have these conceptions. Like I tell people about spending time on this Wolf Island, and sometimes people's first reactions are like, oh my gosh, that sounds so dangerous. You're on an island with a wolf pack, right? But I mean, I could spend a bit of time telling you why that I don't feel, in danger there at all. Like, because I know knowledge is my huge, gives me huge power, and I understand. I really try to understand what the wolves are sense, like what I'm doing, like what they're thinking about me, and what I'm doing to them when I come. Like, there's a lot of things, like when I go out there, I don't howl. I don't pretend to be a wolf, because that's baloney. They're going to be like, what is that human doing over there? Like, I could sound as just like a wolf, and they'd be like, why is that human howling like a wolf? Like, ridiculous, right? So I'm not, I'm not out there pretending to be a wolf. When I'm out there, and I mean, I think this all relates to humility, because it makes me think, it's like, I'm the guest. This is their world. My world is Winnipeg. Like, even though I don't want it to be, and this, I mean, also my world is the whole world, and it's awesome. But I've spent most of my life in Winnipeg, in the city, growing up and living and working. So by definition, by time, this is my life. This is my environment, right? And when I'm out there, I very, very much feel like a guest, even though I do experience times, like I've said, especially in encounters, and where I just, how I described how I just got used to the environment, and it's almost like I became part of the environment, right? Like I felt like I was supposed to be there or was allowed to be there, like that I was at a right vibe of energy, and that nature was like, okay, you're cool, just hang on. Whereas other people, like I said, they bring their urban monster energy into nature with them, and they can't let it go sometimes, right? They're just and they can't slow down and see things, right? And when you see animals moving, and when you see predators, when you see animals where you can kind of see expression, like, the more kind of different an animal gets from us, we can't see as much emotion and expression, right? But like chimpanzees, gorillas, bears, wolves, we can see a little more, you can get to deer and stuff like that. Moose, you can't, it's really hard for us to tell. But when you see a wolf, and it's just like, I'm just walking here, this is my home, I'm just going down to the pond, the supermarket to get some groceries, and when you're there, there is always a part of your human mind that's like, okay, I'm in the wilderness, I need to survive, I need to be safe, I need to protect myself, what do I need to do next? Like, there's always this feeling of an umbilical cord that could be snapped with civilization and what could happen, right? I mean, there are moments, and there are more times for me, where I can let that go and just be there, and just be there, and just have it soak into me. But there's always this kind of, I'm the outsider, my life is over there, and I'm here temporarily, whereas the wolf is just like, yeah, welcome to my yard. And yeah, so when it comes to changing my character, it's yeah, that's a long answer to that to that question.
God, it's changed a lot. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, you're giving us such a beautiful description of nature and the impact that it can have on us when we kind of remove ourselves from all the noise, and everything we can learn from the animals and the values they embody naturally in the patterns of nature, which is based on, sacred geometry at the foundation. So I feel like, Derek, you're probably gonna like help us wrap the you return, but before we do so, you mentioned a few times your name is Wolfhaven, and before I think we started recording, you said that wolves are safe. If somebody sees wolves out in nature, can they be like, oh yeah, they're safe, like no problem, or you have to be in tune?
Okay, so that's a really great question, and that's something, see, there's a whole, that question, it takes a really involved answer in a way, because there's a whole history of how humans and wolves have interacted from Asia and Europe all the way into when Europeans started arriving in North America. The wolf, humans started to create stories about wolves. They started to create rhymes and fairy stories and stories that you told your kids and stuff, but they also started to build the wolf as, so let's say like when the first Europeans arrived in North America, the feeling of those people who came, the feeling of Europeans was the wilderness needed to be pushed away to create civilization. Mm-hmm. We're going to go and put our farms and villages and cities eventually, and we're going to beat back the wild and create civilization, because civilization is the good thing and the wild is the unknown. And the wild, what did the wild have? It had things like wolves, and it had things like unknown indigenous people and darkness at night. And that's another thing that I won't get into too much, but the idea of the wolf, so the wolf became the poster boy of the wild, unknown, scary that we had to beat back. And unfortunately, the wolf, sometimes in certain times, the word wolf was used for indigenous people, because they were also represented to these naive Europeans that they were the wild. We needed to push them away, beat them back, right? And so Europeans arrived with this attitude, okay? Humans on the on the continent before the Europeans arrived were interacting with wolves and had a very different interaction and relationship with wolves. They were essentially peers. Wolves were peers. They hunted the same types of food. They lived in the same types of ecosystems. The wolves were incredible pack hunters. Humans hunted in packs. Have you heard wolves? Humans at times have followed wolves to food, and other times wolves have followed humans to food. And this is probably one of the reasons why the wolf eventually led to domesticated dogs, because they led each other to food. And there's very possibility that there were times when wolf packs and groups of humans were hunting all practically together. They could have been, or sharing the same kills and peacefully, like allowing it to happen. So this similarity between humans and wolves, and so the wolf became this symbol of this. So to Europeans, which contradicted this, indigenous people who had lived in the Americas lived alongside wolves. A lot of the bands had traditions and legends about what wolves meant, and that like wolves were spirit guides. Like they would come and bring messages. There's an idea that wolves, I should have brought this up earlier, went through my whole not seeing wolves for 23 years, because maybe we only see wolves when they have something to tell us. And maybe that's why I didn't see wolves for 23 years, because I wasn't ready for the message, and I feel like I was ready for the message when I finally saw them after 23 years, right? So there's this, these different viewpoints. So the Europeans came with this very foreign idea from North America of what wolves were. They were the enemy. They weren't peers. Like, when you're hunting with spears and arrows and, and alongside wolves who are kicking butt over there, you are going to have respect for them. And humans and wolves are not good eating, and humans are not good eating. Like, we're not good to eat. We have hardly any meat on us. It's really stringy and tough. So wolves do not like to eat. We're definitely not any animal's desired prey. And wolves, the same thing. So there was no reason for them to be natural antagonists. They were peers. They lived side by side in the ecosystem.
Mhm.
And
so to get to Bianca's question, if someone was walking in Yellowstone, they're hiking, and they come upon a wolf, what should they do?
okay, so generally for all predators, like for bears and wolves, which are, this could apply to tiger, I don't know. What you're supposed to do is you never run away, because that could trigger a chase instinct. A predator that had no intention of chasing you, you turn away and run, it triggers something, and they think, oh, you're prey. And they are like, you're acting like my prey. You're running away as soon as you see me. So I'm going to take a little chance maybe and see if I can get you. It triggers it in them. So never run away. What you want to do is stay face towards them, back away, try and find an area where you can back away slowly, and make noises, like unnatural noises that are going to, like if you have a noisemaker of any sort, use that. Singing really loud, like people in grizzly country who are really smart will sing constantly and talk loud as they walk and hike, so that they don't surprise predators. So yeah, back away, look large, and like they're not going to want to mess with you, because again, we go into nature and we take our own stories about what nature is, and we put our ideas onto nature. And when bear and wolf are walking through the forest and they encounter each other, you know what the standard response is going to be? Oh, I'm going to go this way and you're going to go that way. Like the bear goes one way and the wolf goes the other way. Whereas we think everything out in nature is going to attack us and wants to hunt us and kill us because they're aggressive, and that's they're aggressive or violent by nature. Animals are efficient, they're wise, and their wisdom lies there in their efficiency. And if you watch wolves or bears in documentaries, they don't show that they're aggressive until they suddenly need to be, because it is a waste. Like everything, you could look at it as like a calculation of calories. Is what I'm about to do worth the calorie expenditure? And am I going to be able to replace it with what I do? Right? I mean, they're not thinking of that, but do you know what I mean? It's like, is this worth the investment? Right? So going back to that idea of humans are the only ones who can hate, you have two strange humans walking in the forest, and it's their territory. They're going to do all kinds of weird and unpredictable things, way more likely than a bear and a wolf. A bear and a wolf, they're like, I'm not going to get anything out of fighting this thing. There's nothing. This is a waste of my time. This is a waste of energy. There's no reason for me to be doing this right now. Where find, create, dream up reasons to be violent against each other, wars and stuff like, and that is, it's just so we just have this false perception. So, just giving them their space, backing away, and being loud, that like, don't mess with me. And they're, that is likely what's going to do. If a wolf is coming at you at speed, it's over. However, listen to this. I mean, I know so many stories about wolves, and there is only a handful of recorded wolf attacks, intentional wolf attacks on humans in North America over the last 100 years. A handful. And there's one from the Northwest Territories. I love, I do a lot of my storytelling to families and kids, but I know these really brutal stories about humans being hunted by wolves, only a couple of them. And they're very, very unique cases that are very, very unheard of. Like, wolves do not attack people. So, okay, if you're ever in the wilderness and you think there's wolves around, or you hear wolves howling and you are with one other person, they are never going to attack you. Never. Okay, like there's a movie, Frozen, which came out, the animated kids movie Frozen, when it came out, my daughter was just right at the age to start watching movies, and she would watch that movie over and over again. And there was this scene where they're on a sled. It's like in kind of a Scandinavian world, and they're in the winter, and they're on a sled at night, and suddenly there's a wolf pack in the woods, and it starts chasing them on this sled. And the sled there's two people on the sled with a reindeer pulling the sled. Okay. Basically, they are calling wolves idiots. Like, they're calling wolves idiots and stupid. They're representing wolves as ignorant.
Oh yeah. And
a wolf pack would never do that. Never. Like, it has no conception of what a sled is. Why would it? It's not going to be like, oh, that's human behavior. That's human behavior. Recklessness, diving in before you know what you're doing. Like, let's just do it. Wolves see a sled pulled in with people, and they're just like, what is that monstrosity? I'm just going to go over there and like look for fish, like, right? So we have these ideas built. So even just to ask the question, so like when you're by yourself, things are different, but wolves want to have to know you before they hunt you, and humans are unpredictable. We have vehicles, we have guns, we make weird noises, we smell weird. All the products all the clothes that we wear, the ones on Wolf Island are smelling the motorboats, they're smelling gasoline, they're smelling oil, right? It's just, humans are so unpredictable. A wolf encounters a bear, predictable. It's in the wolf's instinct to know how to respond to a bear. It knows in its DNA what the bear is likely to do. Right? It's going to attack, it's not going to attack, it's going to run away. The wolf knows how to respond to this. A wolf encounters a human. Every human's different. Every human has some humans have guns in the wild, some don't. Some have cars, some have snowmobiles, some don't. Some yell, some smell this way, some don't. So wolves are just like, I'm not messing with this. It's not worth their time. So to think, when we think that wolves are going to attack us, that's just our typical humans putting ourselves at the center of the story. It's all about me, they're going to waste their time attacking little old me, right?
Yeah.
Be yourself. There's no meat here. There's no marbled beef here. Like this is not good eating.
Okay, Wolfhaven, today you wanted to share with us this website that you're launching, and a lot of people are going to have accessibility to some of your creations and the projects you're putting out in the world.
Yes.
Would you like to share a little bit with us what this is about and what can people expect to see from you? Because obviously you have so much to share about wolves. You've learned everything to experience, and you deliver everything that you hold. So what can we find, and where can we find it?
So wolfhaven.ca, that, I only decided on the Wolfhaven name this month or December, and then I started working on it, and that domain name was waiting for me. Wolfhaven.ca, it was waiting for me. I was really surprised that it was actually available, but it was there. And it's simple. So on there, I'm working on it. I was working on it today, and there's going to be a whole, like a storytelling repertoire. There's going to be a page about the hero's journey, all about my wolf encounters, upcoming projects. So I'm in the Winnipeg Fringe Festival again this year, doing a 60-minute storytelling show. I did it. It was my debut last year, so I'm going to be doing the show again. So there's going to be announcements about that. Ways to contact me and hire me for gigs if you want. And all the thing, like I'll have, what I'm hoping to do is, if I'm working on a new project, I'm gonna put parts of the project, like little snippets of stuff that I'm working on. And as I build more, more content and do more things, videos and posts, and we'll see. It's, for me, a big part of my journey, I know for many artists, is taking that step to go from feeling very good about what you're creating, but then stepping out of your house and taking it to the world. It takes a lot of stones, takes a lot of guts to do that. I definitely know that for myself. And that's been tough, the marketing, and just say, like I said, when I had the Dark Night of the Soul, like, there's no storytellers around here. Are you kidding me? Like, who am I? I'm not a storyteller, but now I'm ready. I'm doing it. And so the Wolfhaven, and like I said, it just all came together. Name, and my last name being Havens.
That's awesome.
The fact that I go to this Wolf Island, and it is like a Wolfhaven, that I'm passionate about wolves and talk about wolves. So I'm out telling you, protect our wolves, so like a haven for wolves. And also it's just a really cool, fun, mysterious storyteller name, right?
It is cool. And I can attest from having experienced your storytelling that it's a whole experience. So I hope that people who are listening to this are gonna check it out, because while it came to you so effortlessly also, so it does seem like it's kind of this very natural thing, which is usually related to some sort of
I definitely, like I said, the step of Wolfhaven, like it took a lot of guts for me and all, but what helped me was that I felt like I earned that name. Like before, when I was thinking about a stage name or a persona, a storyteller name, I felt like it would be fake. Like I was just like, pretending or doing it too early, too soon. And now, with all these things that have happened, I feel like I've earned that name, and I'm ready to use it and go out in the world. And anytime you see something that says Wolfhaven Presents, that's me. So all my shows, all my workshops in the future will be Wolfhaven Presents, and then whatever it is.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time. Matthew, aka now known as Wolfhaven.
Yes, thank you.
And we want to close with the final question, and that's through all of these stories, this life journey that you have lived beyond wolves. This includes the time in the military, your time raising your daughter who's now in grade 7, your whole life experience, the highs and the lows. What has been the greatest life lesson you've learned on the path that you feel called in this moment to share with the audience?
So many lessons, so many lessons.
Get one.
You mentioned my daughter. Yeah, I only get one. You mentioned my daughter, and I don't know if I talked about my daughter much during this thing. I don't think I did, but I will now. And like she loves dogs. We don't even own a dog, but she's so much learning about dogs. And like I'm the wolf expert. She's becoming the dog expert, and we just have this like, I mean, she loves wolves, and we want documentaries about wolves and read books about wolves together and all kinds of things. And I can't wait to take her to that island. But I had an epiphany, and I mentioned it earlier, about my understanding and relationship with women in my life and female energies, and the female energies that I encounter in other people and myself. The female traits, the female energies, the divine goddess, the divine feminine, that is in all of us, whether we express it or show it or develop it. And I was talking about how I left my coaching business behind, and then I had an epiphany a couple of years ago, and this came from a couple of reasons. It came from my effort to really strengthen my relationship with my daughter, and also Kayla, who you met. She's my colleague and like best friend, and she's the witch, and we're the wolf and the witch together. You met us storytelling together. We go to festivals together, and that platonic friendship has just changed my life, like my perspective on people, on women, on female energy. And so my new relationship with my daughter, and then this, okay, I'm reading about story structure, I'm reading about myth, I'm reading about wherever I read it in a couple different books, okay? And in the story, The Odyssey, written by Homer, there's a character called Mentes. And this is where the word mentor comes from, okay? Mentes. And Mentes was the teacher of the king's son. He was the tutor. But he also gave advice and hung out with the king and gave advice to the king, okay? But when Mentes went to the king and gave the most important advice a couple times in the story, the key advice that made him decide what to do, it wasn't Mentes who went. It was the goddess Athena that took the form of Mentes and went to the king. And that was when he got the advice that he used and moved forward. And so I learned and it wasn't right when I read it, it was kind of like it stuck with me, and I started to think about it. And then there was a moment where it just all crashed into me, like, Matthew, you gave up that coaching business 5 years ago because you weren't ready to be a mentor, because you didn't know how to channel the divine goddess yet. You didn't know how to relate to this female energy in the world. And through my strengthening relationship with my daughter and this best friend, and this epiphany and this understanding through story and mythology of this goddess Athena, who took the form of Mentes to give the advice, spoke to me in such a powerful way that this was what is now happening to me, that my final step, a huge step in my growth, not a final step because it never ends, it was this connection I was creating with female divine energy in the world. And through my she-wolf story and all these new female friends that I have, and I'm single romantically right now, and I have been for a while because it's been part of my journey. learning a new way to relate to women and female energies. And it's, I mean, that epiphany, and like I said, mentorship, and mentorship is on my list of values. And I didn't add that value until I had this epiphany, until I had this realization that I am changed now because of these steps I took to find the other side of myself, to find the other side of the human world. Well, not the other side, but a big part of the human energy in this world, the feminine energy that is everywhere, all over, you know, in men and women and everything. And yeah, and that it was just, that's the synergy. That's what the synergy that I'm talking about, how the stuff, you know, I found this story, this message in my study of story structure and mythology, and how it just directly related to what was happening in my life at the exact same time. And it was just incredible. And it's a lesson that I love to talk about and share with people. Because that myth, that Homer, that story of the Odyssey is written, it's 3,000 years old. And it has these motifs, these symbols, these images that you can look back at and say, yeah, this is human behavior. And it's all coded in these characters and these stories and these mysteries of legend. And it's amazing.
Okay, thank you. So your biggest life lesson is recently has been about learning about this feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Do we have one last question for Wolfhaven?
Yeah, see some stuff written down there for you.
Okay. Okay. Final questions?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. In 3 words, how would you describe the experience you're having on this earth?
In 30 words or 3?
Three
3
words.
words. 1, 2,
30.
That's it. How do you
Oh geez, these types of questions are so challenging because I'm a storyteller. 3 words that describe the journey on this earth. Friendship is one. Learning and nature.
Friendship, learning, and nature.
Beautiful. Friendship, learning, and nature. Yeah, there's a lot in that. I feel like that really
Yeah, there is a lot in that.
And I have a last question before we conclude. So we are going to do this little time traveling thing where we're going to bring you to your 85-year-old version of yourself.
Right.
And that 85-year-old version of yourself is going to whisper to you something, some life advice or some advice for you, something that they want to let you know. What do they say?
They say, Matthew, stop and look around you. Listen, let it in.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I feel like that's a beautiful conclusion to this whole conversation. I don't really have anything to add to this. I feel like that's it. That's it right there.
This has been incredible. I'm so happy about this. You folks invited me on to talk to you and to talk. You know what? I have a little sign I wrote before this thing that says slow down, because I often talk way too fast. And then I just wrote right below that, on a spur of the moment, wisdom equals humility. And sometimes you hang out with a group of people and you walk away and you go, oh, there was that person who only said a few things. They're some kind of guru or something, They barely spoke, but the stuff they said meant something, right? And had meaning because it wasn't just constant words, right? So I'm definitely learning that as a mentor, that a lot of the time I'm not talking. That's not my role as a mentor. But so to be invited to talk for an hour all about myself is awesome. It's fun because it's like, woo.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself today. That was awesome for Derek and I as well. And I hope that our listeners enjoyed too. For people who want to find you and get in touch with the beautiful offerings you're sharing now that we're super excited about, they can find you at wolfhaven.ca. That's right?
Yes, exactly. And there's going to be contact information on there and
Perfect.
all kinds of information about me and what I'm working on.
And to conclude every episode on the Welcome to the Winner's Circle podcast, we end up with a fist pump together. So yeah, let's just bring it in.
Good. Yeah, right to the camera. Boom.
Awesome.
Right on.
So much for your time.
Yeah.
Today. Awesome.
You folks are so great. I love your positivity and what you're doing with these podcasts. So great. I'm so grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. Until next time.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.